Deep within there lies a story never told. In the cavern of my heart, I see the end, but I'm not sure how it unfolds. Will you show me where to start? Hope comes to shatter the fear and will scatter the lies that have led us astray. Morning is broken, the truth shall be spoken, and light shines to show us the way. So I raise my hands on up, I raise them up, oh I surrender. I surrender to the fall. Oh raise me up, oh keep me up, sweet mother resurrect me. I surrender to it all. Lift me up. Lift me up. Faith is about what you can't see. Trust in the sound deep inside of me, and you. It's in our hands to become who we are meant to be. Pendulum swinging, stars they are singing a new song. So lift your voice and rise. They say we're woke, but we are standing while asleep. Though our eyes are open wide, can we set alight what's buried in the deep? So we're not blind to what's inside. Time is ticking while gears turn a clickety-clack like they're ready to stall. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, it's okay to crawl. So let's raise our hands on up, we'll raise them up, oh let's surrender. We'll surrender to the fall. Oh raise them up, please keep them up, give up the weight completely. Just keep moving through it all. Lift us up. Lift us up. Faith is about what you can't see. Trust in the sound deep inside of me and you. It's in our hands to become who we are meant to be. Pendulum swinging, the songs they are singing a new song. So lift your voice and rise. So we'll raise our hands on up, we'll raise them up, oh let's surrender. Surrender to the fall. Oh raise them up, please keep them up, give up the weight completely. Just keep moving through it all. Lift us up. Lift us up. Thank you.
She wrote that song just for us. I'm going to say that anyway, but she was writing a song and it came out the way it came out, and she said, Kim, I think I wrote this song for you. So anyway, that's why we are so blessed to have her singing. So please remember her name, Andrea Flax. She is a performer and does perform besides just on this Born to Rise stage. So keep her in mind. So this is a really special Born to Rise festival. If any of you have been following along from, the 4 years ago when we started, you know that the festivals have typically been a little more grassrootsy, a lot of outdoor time, and held in Tiverton. So we're really excited to be here at RISD, where I went to college. It's kind of like full circle, and to welcome in a new sort of version of our festival where we're really celebrating the authors of the newly released Born to Rise book. So if the authors could just stand for a second, I'd love to have you be recognized. The book project was really a lot more than just writing a story. My publisher, World Changers Media, Bryna Haynes, and I have been friends for a while, and we got together to talk about this project. And being the publisher that she is, of course, encouraged me to do an anthology, knowing that our mission is to get these women's voices out there. And so as we were writing, and on this little napkin on the corner cafe table, planning what this would be, we thought, we've got to really make it come alive. We need the book to feel like a community, for it to feel that it has energy behind it and all of that. And you're going to hear that energy come through in the storytellers today. I really feel like they have gone deep and been willing to find that place in their hearts that needed to be shared and be an inspiration for all of you. So I really hope that you can see that power in that process that they've been saying yes to for the last 8 months, to really start to explore what it means to have a story. Hello, little munchkin. Who is that? Where? Oh, there. He's got his own story. So anyway, this project has been just so amazing, and you'll be hearing from these women. We've had some amazing sponsors. So we had Bank Newport was one of our top sponsors, and Division 5, which is a construction company. One of our gals will be speaking is a woman in construction, so she was able to help get some support there. Thank you to our next level sponsor, IGT. Thank you, my sister, for helping us get the IGT sponsorship. And we have sponsorship from Marlene Harrington, who does self-defense classes for women. Thank you, Marlene. Festoon Jewelry, Bean Brothers Construction, North Smithfield Automotive, one of our storytellers' family has owned that business for a very long time, and Sea Witch Medicinals. And a big thank you to Kim Kirby Design as well. So thank you to our sponsors. My name is Kim Fuller, by the way. I didn't even tell you my name. In case you don't know who this person is standing up here. I am the founder of Born to Rise. It started with a desire to share an experience that I had, standing on stage in front of a live audience, shaking in my boots, but sharing a very personal and a story that changed my life. And so the experience was so healing and so beautiful, and the support that came from the audience, like yourselves, encouraged me to think about how I could make this possible for more people. And so we just literally had a story night in Newport, Rhode Island at a restaurant, and 60 women showed up. It was absolutely amazing. I literally just invited 3 women who I knew to share a personal story, and they did that, and it was so powerful, and it's just only gone forward from there. And what I'll say is that we are creating herstory. We have heard from the his of history for a very long time, and those stories are very important. We are trying to balance those stories that we hear in history and create a legacy for people coming after us who want to know what it was like in 2023. A time when women can start talking about compassion, empathy, community, gathering, all of those pieces of our humanness that exists in all of us, but really hasn't been shared from women's voices. But I believe that those voices are for everyone. They're not just for women, they're just from women. But it's our time to be able to come together as men and women, black and white, straight, gay, whatever it might be, to share our stories so we begin to really understand one another on a level where we can have compassion and empathy and say, you do you. As long as you're not hurting anybody, you do you, and then I'm given that space to do me, right? So you're gonna hear many versions of different experiences today. You're probably going to resonate with many of them, and I hope that you can walk away feeling inspired to share your own story. We are going to do another book. So we are looking for more women authors who want to share a story. We have some cards out on the table for later if you would like to do that. And these authors have agreed to mentor the next set of authors into this next version of the book. So you will be fully supported by people who have already gone through this. So it's going to be very exciting. So thank you for that. So let's begin the show. Our first storyteller is Ashley Cook, and she's a professional storyteller, copywriter, and copy mentor with over 15 years of sales and marketing experience. She's crafted sales material for Fortune 500 companies and coached 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs on how to communicate their value to their clients. As a seminary graduate and avid writer, Ashley believes in the power of words. She now helps women who have been hurt by religion and tell their story so they can feel supported, have peace in their beliefs, and remember they're not alone. Please welcome Ashley Cook.
The year is 2020. No, the year is 2000. And I am 15 years old. And I have a notebook that I want to tell you about. Now, this isn't just any notebook. This is my super Jesus-y notebook. And it doesn't look like any notebook. It is bright red with a black binding on it. And on the front, it says, "Private information, read, and you're doing something wrong," scribbled across the front. Now, when you open this notebook, there's a list of names. And these are friends of mine from high school who aren't yet saved. So on any given night, I will take the notebook and I would jump into my bed surrounded by my pillows and my stuffed animals, and I would beg God to please save my friends. Because I didn't want them to go to hell. I wanted them to know the goodness of God the way I had come to know it. So I'd pray and I'd pray and I'd pray. And then one day I learned one of my friends got saved. So I ran home and I pulled out my notebook and I checked their name off the list because I had something to do with their salvation. And then I added a new name on the list. See, the year prior, when I was 14 years old, I got saved and I was devout. And I'm what you would call like a good Christian girl. So I go to Sunday school and big church and Wednesday night youth group and Friday night Bible studies. And I would help out at Vacation Bible School, and I'd learn those endearing kind of militant children's songs like "I'm in the Lord's Army." And then every day I'd wear my WWJD bracelet or my cross necklace or my Jesus shirts. And each night I would pray against the devil, demons, and the depravity of the world. You know, like typical teenage stuff. So, who even needs to journal about boys when you can write about the joy of the Lord? So what I would do is in my little red notebook, I would write little mini Bible studies like the 14 guidelines of holy living, or the really popular one, being pure, which is where I also had to ask God for forgiveness because of all those Yo Mama jokes I laughed at in theater arts class. So at the end of my journal entries, I would sign, "Peace, love, God, and keep the Backstreet Pride alive." So that was me at 15 years old. As a teenager and newly minted Christian, I began to see the world as a spiritual battleground, and I was a warrior. I would listen to rapture sermons at church where Jesus would come and snatch up all the believers and leave all the heathens behind in their chaos and destruction. I would listen to praise and worship music like "This World Is Not My Home." And every night I would go home and I would pray, "Lord, please protect my family tonight against any evil that could penetrate our house, our homes, or our heart." Because see, I genuinely believed that the devil was watching me at all times and that evil could somehow come through our air vents in our home. And it didn't stop there. I carried with me in my back pocket this little card that was of the armor of God, so that at all times I could be spiritually suited up and ready for battle, because I was in the Lord's army after all. So this continued on into, later into my teens, when there was a journal entry I wrote that said, is life about constant inner struggles? I'm tired of battling. I'm tired of this soul warfare. I'm an age-wounded soldier waiting for home to come. I was 19 when I wrote that. Page after page after page of lamenting and begging God for forgiveness and for purity. And this didn't just stop in my 20s. This continued on all throughout my 20s, when I went to seminary, when I went to be on church leadership teams, on mission trips, and all the while, I love church. So I had this great experience and would laugh and have all these wonderful memories, but then my journals would tell of this very different inner story. And that's where the complicated thing about religion came in for me, is that I had so many wonderful memories in the church, but, like church potlucks and, my grandfather leading songs on Sunday morning, or Friday night Bible studies, and having a place to go and serve, and a place where I could go and feel like I could connect in with God. But underneath it all was this undercurrent that was forming, where I wasn't really getting answers to questions that I had. And I started to wonder, did God maybe believe in me more than the church did? And what do I do with that? But really, it was this fear that was forming under the bedrock of my faith that was like, yeah, I could walk in the freedom of Christ, but what if I'm just going to be walking on eggshells the entire time? So really, when I look at it, there were 3 fears that formed the foundation of my faith. So what are those 3 fears? I'm sure you're very excited to find this out. So the first fear that I had was the fear of evil, or going to hell, even though I was saved. So I was taught that you could have the assurance of your salvation, that there was nothing you could do to make you lose it. But at the same time, I was taught narrow is the way, the devil's always lurking. If you crack open the door, he's going to take the whole house. And I remember hearing one sermon in my teenage years about what is the scariest verse in the Bible for me at that time, which was James 2:19, which is, you believe in one God. Good. Even the demons believe and shudder. So for me, it wasn't enough to just believe. I was expected to reorient my entire life around my faith. And as a teenager and young adult, that became my everything. Because if Jesus was going to come back, what if I wasn't ready? So then comes the second fear. And this was, because this was the 90s, and I know it still goes on. The second fear was the fear of getting pregnant outside of marriage. So I had this crippling paranoia growing up that I was going to get pregnant before I got married. And keep in mind, I am the good Christian girl, so I'm not doing anything scandalous, right? But in my mind, I'm will it happen to Mary? Maybe could it happen again? I don't really know. And what happened is that normal teenage thoughts became the gateway to promiscuity. So I would pray for God to guard my mind, guard my heart, guard my thoughts. I signed purity pledges. I wore purity rings. I binged hours of TLC's The Baby Story, where I watched in horror of women giving birth to kids. And as a teenager, I was watching this. And what happened is for decades, for 2 decades after, well into my 30s, I had reoccurring nightmares that I would get pregnant outside of wedlock. And I would bring shame on my family and on my church. That I would disappoint somehow my family, disappoint important people in my life, and disappoint God. Which brings me to the greatest fear of all, which is the fear of rejection. And this one's a pretty sinister one. So this one, you have the church where I had all these wonderful, meaningful, amazing experiences, yet at the same time, if I believed differently, if I thought differently, if I even hinted at rocking the boat, there was this felt risk of conform or be rejected. And you might be thinking at this point, oh my gosh, what churches did she get caught up in? Which is fair. It's fair. Most of them were in Texas, where I was born and raised. Most of them were evangelical. But I felt this risk of conform or be rejected across many churches and many denominations and many states where I lived. And it was hard. It was this dual world of I love this place, but now this place that I've loved and was so life-giving is no longer a safe space for me. So why am I sharing all of this with you? Because I believe in life we have circumstances that happen that can really allow us to pressure test our beliefs. So some of these invitations or some of these events can be smaller invitations, and some of them can really jolt us off the course that we're on. And oftentimes these events invite us to ask or to answer the question, conform or be rejected. And so when you have something like the church, it begs the question, okay, I have my faith, which means something so deeply to me, but then I've had these troubling experiences. Like, what do I do? How do I reconcile these two? Do I stay in the church and then, be in this place where it's no longer safe or healthy for me, or do I leave? And if I leave, do I risk my social network? Do I risk opportunities to serve? Do I risk my connection to God? And then if I leave, where do I go? Do I go to another church where I sign up for a whole other round of hot mess? Or maybe I just don't go back to church at all. And it can feel really disillusioning, fearful, disorienting. It can feel alone. And it can feel also incredibly freeing at the same time. And so it's this really bizarre kind of mixed bag. So my chapter in Born to Rise tells of a particularly uncomfortable story that I experienced in the church. And it was the first time that I was faced with the very real fear of, will I get kicked out of the church over this? And for the good Christian girl who had her little red notebook and wore her faith on her sleeve and hinged her whole existence around being a Jesus freak, it was a choice I never wanted to make. But this time, the good Christian girl chose a different ending. So I invite you to grab a copy if you haven't already, step into my story, and find out how. Thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. You're so good. Hello? It's there. Where's my Janet Jackson music? No, I'm kidding. Everybody knows I like to sing. Thank you. Good intro music. Thank you, Ashley. So our next beautiful storyteller is my dear friend, and I'm calling you that because I'm claiming it. Michelle Lemoy is a strategic catalyst, a visionary leader, an author, a corporate trainer and consultant, and entrepreneur. She has over 30 years' experience in the construction industry. She was president of Lemoy Erectors, Inc., a steel erecting company from 2009 to 2016. She's the CEO and founder of Elevate, Women in Construction, providing training, resources, and support for women in male-dominated industries looking to move from surviving to thriving in their environments. Michelle provides custom corporate training and consulting and is a sought-after speaker. She has authored 2 contributory chapters, one in an Amazon bestseller, and that's all I've got. Sorry. Your page ran out. No. Please welcome my dear friend Michelle Lemoy. She's awesome.
What's it like being a woman in construction? Well, it looks a little something like this. I have to work harder. I have to work faster. I have to do all the things, and I have to know all the things. Sometimes I hear things like this. Will there be anybody else joining us on this call today? No, just me. Hey, how long you been doing this for? Actually 30 years. Really? You sure about that? Yeah, I'm sure. I'm positive. Wow, look at you. You have your hard hat on, your safety vest, your safety goggles, and your steel-toed boots. Mm-hmm. Wow, you're like the real thing. I try. And so here's the thing. Despite all of that, I love what I do, and I think I'm kind of good at it. As I said, I've been doing it for 30 years. Folks, that's 1992 that I started. Yep, that's how long ago it was. But here's what I know. What led to my success in those early days is that I was an avid learner. I absolutely dove right in and wanted to understand and figure it out. If I didn't understand what it looked like on a 2D drawing, I was jumping in my car, driving down the Mass Pike, going to the job site and looking up in the air and saying, oh, I got it. I also am a people pleaser, and I want people to like me and accept me and love me. And so I tried really, really hard to be accepted and respected. And that meant a lot of masculine energies of pushing, doing, and striving. And that served me well because I got really good at what I was doing. And the last factor that really contributed to my success was that I had these amazing male champions, still do, that answered my hundreds, if not thousands, of questions. But they weren't intimidated by my intelligence, my light, or my willingness to learn. And so I'm so grateful for them. And so as I grew in this industry and different job sites, many experiences, the reaction to me being a woman in construction has varied. Now this is going towards the early stages. It might sound something like this. This broad, yeah, she knows her stuff. Nobody kind of says that anymore. I'm just saying, thank God. It might sound like, you know what, Michelle? You're really exasperating me. In fact, my friend can tell you, about 7 years ago, we were on a job site that was the length of 5 football fields long. And here comes the golf cart running at us on 2 wheels coming in hot. And I thought, oh boy, I'm in trouble now. And he literally stopped the golf cart barely to a full stop, jumped out and was literally up and down yelling, Michelle, you never do anything I tell you to do. I thought, well, that's interesting. I don't work for you. And much to our amusement, as he was acting like a 2-year-old, what it really translated into is that he was really angry that he had barred me from the job site, had tried to sell our company down the river, that we were behind schedule, and I might have sneaked in the back door and taken pictures to prove that it was him that was holding us up. He really didn't like me in that moment, and I can tell you it really didn't bother me. Women make up about 14% of the construction industry. It's a very small number, but it's better than it was 2 years ago at 9%. And here's what I know. The industry is very dynamic and ever-changing. It's an opportunity for growth for women. We have a worker shortage, and women can absolutely fill that shortage. I know, I'm living proof. My friend here in the front row is also living proof. And in a macro level, there's a lot more talk about diversity and equity, inclusion and equality. And so there's a lot of hope there. And there are companies like Division 5 and Hilti and Koopman Lumber that are seeing the benefit of embracing the women that are on their workforce and giving them the opportunity to shine. So you say, Michelle, with all of that being said, how did you move from surviving in your environment to thriving? And it all came down a couple of years ago when I was looking at getting let go from the company that I was with. And what I realized is that I had not built a solid foundation for myself to stand on. And I allude to this in my chapter in the book. And what that meant is that part of that people pleasing, I was really making decisions based on how it affected others and not necessarily me. And I really didn't know who I was. And I didn't know maybe what I stood for, because that could change if somebody else had something that was more pressing or more important. So I had to do the work. And I had to build that foundation so that no one person, event, or situation could crumble it. Because you see, I had had a lot of devastating losses in my lifetime. And if any of you have been there, you'll recognize that it takes a very long time to rebuild. And it's very, very painful. And at this point in my life, I really don't have the time, energy, or money to be rebuilding my foundation again. So I had to make it unshakable. And that meant figuring out who Michelle Lemoy is. And in doing that, I recognized that I was spending a lot of time in those masculine energies of pushing, doing, and striving. And I needed to actually balance that with more of those feminine qualities of receiving, taking breaks, resting. And that led me to developing a self-care practice that helps me stay in balance and in alignment. Because when I am out of balance and out of alignment, I get sick very easily. I tend to overwork. And when that happens, then I really can't do the things that light me up, which is to be there for others. That's my joy. And so as I went through this transformation over the last several years, I saw that I can be more present, more joy, and really be happy that I am a woman in construction. And so I advocate very strongly for women to be a part of this industry. We need you. Our men need you, just like we need our men. And as Kim mentioned earlier, it's not an either or, it's an and. And so my hope is that more women will join and that the industry will continue to make strides to bring in more empathy and compassion and understanding and collaboration. This is my hope. This is my dream. This is the future. And so it is. Thank you so much.
The interesting thing to me about writing our stories down and having them in a book that someone may randomly find in a bookstore 20 years from now is they're going to look back. And at the pace the world is moving, some of these stories won't even really be something they can recognize. Whether it's the fact that we have a lot of women in construction, and they're like, what do you mean there weren't women in construction? Maybe we won't have religious problems or issues because religion completely changes, opens, expands, becomes spirituality versus different dogmas or parts of, religious trainings change. Who knows? Maybe there won't be gender issues. Maybe we won't even have what we now see as marriage. So it's just really interesting to think about documenting the stories that are happening now and someone reading about them later, because we know the world is moving so fast. So I really appreciate both of you stories the two stories that were just told. So again, thank you guys. On your program, we were supposed to have a woman named Parshell speak next, but she was unable to come, so that's not happening. But we do have a very special performance. So what I love to bring in the festivals beyond just speaking your story is that the awareness that we can share our stories in multiple ways. We can share our stories like Andy did so beautifully in her song. We share stories through speaking, and we can always also share stories through movement and dance and self-expression. So this next performer is a very dear friend of mine, an extremely amazing performer, and is so dedicated to the assignment, if you will, to perform today. But she's going to do a little piece, and we're going to welcome up two of our authors, Kelly and Jess, to assist her in a minute. But please welcome my dear friend, Katie Moorhead.
Every morning, every morning, furniture, dark thought, grateful,
We on? Yes. Thank you, Katie. That was amazing. Thank you, Jess and Kelly. Before I introduce the next section, one of our storytellers who maybe you've already read the book, maybe you haven't, but she is a young woman who is in her 20s, early 20s, and has something called mitochondrial disease. So if you read her story, you kind of know what she's been going through. Sadly, last night, her mother called in tears, but she is not doing so hot and was supposed to be on our panel today. But her biggest wish was to not disappoint us. So just maybe we can take a moment and just send her good health as she's navigating her journey through this getting better part. So just take a moment, please. Thank you. Her name is MJ Malici, Mary Jane. Okay, so now we're going to welcome up our panel of beautiful authors who are going to just kind of talk about their journeys through this project. You guys can bring the chairs up, yeah. And we have our moderator, Diane Kane. And you will also be hearing from, Kim and Juliana, Kendra, and Nikki, and our beautiful publisher, Bryna Haynes.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Diane Kane. I am chapter 11 in the book. I'm very excited to be able to moderate our beautiful author panel discussion today. And we're going to tell you a little bit about what our journey was like in walking through this process, because it is something that's vulnerable, it's exciting, and it's scary as all hell. And so Kim had to remind me this morning, because I am the one who is very happy to shine the light on everybody else and make sure that they were seen and heard. And she looked at me this morning and she said, now, Diane, before you get into the moderator part of your role and asking the questions, make sure, girl, you share your part of the story. And so thank you, Kim, for reminding me to be able to do that. This is the second anthology that I have been in. I had literally just finished one when Bryna sent me a Voxer and said, hey girl, Kim and I just met. We're going to do this book project and we want you to join us. Why don't you think about it? And I had just finished one and I was like, oh, I am not sure that I want to do this again. And I am so grateful that we took the time, and I actually did say yes to the Born to Rise project, because it has been such a wonderful experience. I have gotten to meet the most wonderful people, and I was able to pull through the part of the story. There's this quote that says, we live our lives forwards, but we understand it in reverse. And going through the process with our editor, which was at times a really painful experience for all of the things, it helped me to understand and to see how grief helped me, or actually hindered some of my decisions walking through life. So as you read my chapter, you will read my story about how losing my fiance at 21 led me to making some decisions that I knew were against my gut, and I did it anyway because I had this dream of being married and having a family. And when you read the story, you'll hear how that didn't go according to plan. But I did meet the boy next door and get our little happily ever after. And I see you, Bobby Keene, over there. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It is not a straight path. It has many ups and downs, and I am so grateful for being part of this project, for being to be able to moderate this discussion with you beautiful women, and for all the authors that are out here and standing in front of us. So with that, I am going to start asking questions of our gorgeous authors over here. So, are you ready, ladies? Are you ready? All right. I'm not going to go in the order that they're sitting. I'm going to mix it up a little bit, just so you know, okay? All right. So Kendra, goddess, gorgeous woman over here. Mm-hmm.
It's on. Okay. Yes.
Tell us, how did writing and telling your story further bring your story alive and ground it for you?
What was that last part?
How did it bring it alive and ground it more for you?
Yeah. The process of writing my story gave me an avenue and a method and a pathway to reconnect with aspects of myself that I didn't know I wanted to return to, places inside of myself to confront, places inside of myself to reconcile, to come to peace with. And it was as if I got to go back and to retrieve myself, parts of myself that I had lost or had, suppressed. And so the journey of reconnecting with the voice, the spirit, the essence of that time of my life helped me to get to know myself in really surprising, welcoming ways, to bring alive parts of myself that I had diminished or just, left behind. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was able to retrieve the gifts and the contributions of this younger part of myself. And I feel her grounded and expressed in my life now through writing this story. It was really beautiful.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kendra.
Yeah.
When you say
Thank you. You're all so good.
You said retrieve parts of yourself, and it resonates with me because there's parts of us that we are just trying to move forward, right? We're trying to move forward in our lives, and we don't necessarily take the time to pause and honor the parts of us that helped us move forward. Was there anything that was surprising for you in the process of writing that you discovered?
Thanks for asking that and highlighting this, because I think one of the many powerful aspects of telling our stories, accessing and permitting and telling our stories, is to really champion, whatever it is that perhaps we had denied as having any kind of treasure or gift. And I think a lot of us live, or at least myself, parts of our lives is like, oh, that shouldn't have happened. That was a mistake. It should happen another way. And so there's a way of which really pausing, reflecting, and as you said, that highlight of the retrieving, I keep coming up with that word. It's as if I could extract the medicine of that time in a way that up until that point, I hadn't really seen the totality of what it had for me. Yeah.
I love how you said that, extract the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I got chills on that one. Thank you, Kendra, for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, Kim, coming over to you. Coming over to you. So Kim and Juliana, we have a duo right here. But Kim, out of all of the things that you could have written about, why did you choose the topic that you chose? And why did you ask Juliana to be your ghostwriter?
Ooh, that's a good one.
At your chin.
Don't worry, I'll hold it right to my chin. So when Juliana and I sat down to talk about the opportunities that we'd have for writing a story, I wasn't really sure if there was really anything I could share with everybody. I'm like, what's my life really about? Is there really anything significant that I could share that would be important, that could help others? And that was the key for me, was, is there something in my life that could be helpful, impactful? And when she and I started to sort of talk through things, we played around with a few different items and areas. And what I locked in on was the fact that my whole life, I found myself hiding who I was for the benefit of everybody else. And I didn't really understand what that was all about until I sat down one day and started talking to Kim. And I locked in on this notion of labels. And I didn't understand why I had such adversity to labels. What does labels really mean? And I understand that they are necessary for people, but I didn't really appreciate it. And when I learned about why labels were really challenging for me, it was because every time a label got attached to me, something bad would happen to me. And so for myself, I had struggled with having a label my whole life. And then I had two amazing, beautiful daughters. And I watched them live life without fear. And if they have fear, you never know it, because they are living their life in their most authentic way, just being who they are. And even if they haven't realized entirely who they are on the path to finding themselves in a way that was so beautiful that I never felt like I could experience. So why the story? Because for the first time in my life, I want to live my life authentically.
Yes.
Thank you. So the second part of that story is, why Juliana?
Yes.
Juliana is an amazing, talented individual. The things that she writes are absolutely mind-blowing. But more importantly, thank you. Why? Because there's no other person in this world I could have thought helping me through this journey than my own daughter. Because she helped me through the hardest, darkest, deepest parts of my life. And she helped me find closure and a path forward. And so, Juliana, I can't thank you for the life that you breathed into my story and how you've helped me get through this next stage.
Thank you, Kim. Juliana's like, you're giving me the mic? What? Yes. Juliana, you said yes to being Mom's ghostwriter
Yes.
and walking through this journey with her. What was the effect on your relationship? Because I can clearly see you already have a very close one, but what happened during the process for the two of you?
Well, like you just said, we'd already started off very close, like at least I would say so. Like, and she had sat me down and she'd asked me, because she sat me down and she said that she was looking at this new project and that she needed someone to help her write it because she didn't really know. She knew the message she wanted to get across, but she didn't necessarily have the words to put it together. And she sat me down and she told me, Juliana, I think you're the only person I feel comfortable talking about this with. And a lot of the events that we talked about, like she said, we went through a lot of different versions where we learned a lot about each other because through the process, we sat down, we would have to do interviews. And I'd sort of known the outline of a lot of the things that happened to her, but going in detail and having these conversations with her, it gave me so much more appreciation for what she had to go through in her life. And I already had some sort of knowledge, but I'm just so impressed by her and everything that she's been able to overcome. Not because what you go through isn't what defines you, it's what you do with it and how you overcome it. So just seeing where she came from and seeing how she got to where she came from today, I've always said to her, the one thing I hope for my future as I'm approaching college is that I turn into somewhat of a role model that she became for me.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. It's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Nikki, she's like, oh, you didn't ask me yet. She gave me the eyeball. Did you see that? Nikki, what would you hope that others gain by sharing your story?
I think that I hope what others would gain is this idea of, it sounds simple, not giving up, but it's so much harder than that. When you read my story, or if you've read my story, there is a lot of grief and loss and tragedy. Even from birth, my mom was homeless, and I dropped out of high school while being pregnant. And I did lose a child later on, and then almost lost my own life and went through a divorce. Just a lot of risk factors and not a whole lot of protective factors. So I think that I work now in a high school with teenagers, and I tell them all the time that your journey doesn't have to look the way you think it's going to look, or it's not okay that you suffered this trauma, but it can be okay. And, if you don't, we have graduation Wednesday night, and a girl texted me last night who happens to be 6 months pregnant. And she's like, Miss, I think I'm going to graduate. I have 3 more pages left to write, and I'm going to keep writing. And that's what I want. I want her not to give up. And I think when people read my story, what I hope they see is that I didn't give up. And, my chapter is called Crawling Through the Crust. And that's definitely what it's felt like over the years. But now, things are great. And when you read my story, you'll see, how the ending was and how things are now.
Thank you for sharing that, Nikki. I love that you are the support, that you are able to share and shine your light and to be the example for people, right? Because we know that we always think that we have this grand plan. We think that it's this linear process, and it's not. It never is. And so thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing every part of that journey with us. So appreciate it. I see you. Bryna.
Diane.
Madam World Changer. The reason why we're all in this room today and participated in this beautiful process. She's just a badass. I just want you all to know.
Thank you.
All right, tell us about the napkin conversation and how Born to Rise was birthed.
Absolutely. Well, as Kim shared, she and I have been friends for a long time. And
when she was exploring how to bring more women's stories into the public eye and really, get these women's voices heard, because we need more herstory. I had this, I wasn't necessarily doing any anthology projects with our publishing company. And I'm like, what would be perfect for this is that we should collect these stories and publish it as a book. And luckily, I have some experience doing that. In the early part of my career as an editor and ghostwriter, I worked with a wonderful small publishing company, Inspire Living Publishing, and I did a lot of anthologies with them. And I was like, oh, I know how to do this. Like this, we can do this. This would be amazing. And it was really, it felt so seamless right from the beginning. And of course, there's no one I would rather work with than Kim. I mean, Kim is just, she's my Buddha. She always sees the truth in people and in me, and is one of the people in my life who can truly hold all of who I am and see all of who I am and be like, yeah, girl, you're good. And then that was how it started, and we just started brainstorming and like popcorn, and it just all emerged. It was already there. It was waiting for us to be like, oh yeah, we should do this thing. It emerged fully formed. And yes, we had to hone the details, and yes, we had some behind the scenes things that were like less than streamlined, but can I give a shout out to our amazing team at World Changers, my COO, Mauricio Bento, and Alexa, our chief marketing goddess. Yep, and they really made this possible and kept all the moving parts flowing smoothly. So yeah, it's been an incredible process to be part of, to watch develop, and it's been just world changing. It's my word that I use all the time, if you haven't figured that out.
It is world changing every single time. And so sharing our stories, right? Whenever we think that we don't have something to share, we do. I think the thing that came to us over and over again too was, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, that really sucked. Oh, you are so incredibly resilient and amazing, and every one of you out here is as well. And so Kim has already talked about, we've got book 2. Book 2 is coming.
Book 2 is coming.
Book 2 is coming.
Absolutely.
Book 2 is coming.
Because there are so many more amazing women out there who need to tell their stories. And yes. I just want to speak to the level of incredible transformation that has happened within this container. Like what you're seeing tonight is the culmination, like Kim said, of 8 months of work and 8 months of joy and tears and not a little bit of frustration and not a little bit of people really coming face to face with their fears around visibility, around being all of who they are, around stepping into this next level of serving, of teaching, of leading, of influencing. And every single one of them broke through that barrier. You guys are fucking brave. You are so brave. And you are so powerful and so magical. And now we get to create a space for that to happen again with another amazing group of women, because the world needs us. Like we're being required to step up and step out. And our stories need to be told, and our transformations need to be witnessed. And it's a powerful medicine, to use your word, right? And so I'm excited to be doing this again with the amazing Kim Fuller. Yes. And and the doors are open. We have some information out front if anyone would like to speak with us further about that.
Thanks, Brenna. All right, audience. You didn't know that this was going to be a two-way conversation, did you? You just thought you were going to come here and support us and cheer us on, and we so appreciate all of you. Now, do any of you have questions for our beautiful panel to ask about the process? if you're considering the process, we can help answer one of those questions for you as well. But the beautiful Kelly and the beautiful Jess have microphones. Don't be shy. So we would love to hear from you. Raise your hand, and one of the beauties will come.
Or if you just
And
want to
bring
see
the
me
mic to
run in
you.
these heels, that's another good reason to ask.
Are
a
you in your
question.
heels?
I'm back in my heels, and I'm going to run to you with this microphone.
All right, so you
ask
can
a
walk.
question.
You can walk slowly through the crowd. Either one, whatever
Slowly.
works.
Faster's way funnier. Faster's way funnier.
All right, we've got one. Woo! Hi there. Thank you very much for sharing your stories. And I have not read the book yet, but I'm looking forward to it, and I will get to that immediately. But I am curious, and I don't know who wants to speak to this, but really, what was the process in terms of, how were you chosen to write these stories, and then what happened after that? And obviously there was a lot of sharing. There was a lot of, okay, I'm nervous about this. I've never done this before. How do I make this work? And obviously some collaboration, and I'm sure a lot more collaboration than that. But I'm just interested to know really what the process was and how you got from point A to point now.
Yeah, so when we were inviting and selecting our authors, it was really about, who has a really incredible transformational story to tell, but more importantly, who can bring their full self to this container for their story, for the other women in the container, for the project. After 17 years in the book industry, we can pull out a story. We know how to get people to tell their stories. And Kim is the master of story coaching. So it wasn't necessary for anyone to have a story fully formed in order to come into this container. It was more like, are you in? Are you really in? Are you all in? Are you really all in? Are you strip naked and dance in the rain all in? That's what the requirement was. And thankfully we have a lot of people who are really willing to go all in. And so after that, we did a lot of, Kim coached all of the authors individually. We coached in groups. Our editing team is fantastic and did some individual coaching with our authors as well. There were many drafts written. There were, monthly meetings and talking about our stories. And then we had our in-person author gathering here in Providence in January, and everybody shared their stories aloud. And there was refinement that happened in the wake of that. And that was really powerful weekend. And so it was a beautiful evolution. And so we truly believe that everyone has a transformational story to tell. The deciding factor for a project like this is the readiness to look at our lives and say, I learned something that can help someone. I learned something that the world needs to know. This is a perspective that will change minds or change lives. So that's where we started.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to add to that?
I want to honor the time. Once I get going, what could I add to that? So there are a lot of elements of writing my story that were healing for me. One of which is that I am a recovering perfectionist. Any other perfectionists? Yes. And so that had proved to be a sticking point or a limitation in my creative process. So as far as this particular collaboration, one of the reasons I said yes is that I have been so fortified in being in women's community, being seen, being witnessed, being championed by others. And to that point, there was a lot of aloneness in my attempt to excavate my voice and my story in this fashion. And so I just remember just a little scene of a story of how I was supported is that it was time for rough drafts. And, for my perfectionist, rough is not good enough. It doesn't reach the peak of what I think is presentable for the world to see. And, there's something about telling our stories that, as has been shared, is very vulnerable, it's very exposing. And the question of, is it enough? Did I do good enough? And I remember sending a message beyond the due date to Kim and to Bryna, and I just felt mortified. I felt, this kind of humiliation because it wasn't polished enough. And I said, no, this isn't just a rough draft. It's not just a shitty draft. It's a shitty, shitty, shitty draft. And just even that part of the process, and to be so supported, it was so healing for me. So my experience in this book project is that I was met so well by the team and the other women, other authors along the way. And we all need that. We all need a space that we know that we're gonna keep getting through this together. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks,
so I don't know if I answered your question.
Did that answer your question? Yeah? She's like, it'll be so good. So good. I'm like, maybe she's considering book 2. It was such a great, juicy question. Do we have any other questions? Awesome. Here we are.
I'm Kim's mom, by the way, if I can stand up here.
Yay!
I noticed when I read this book, which is absolutely amazing, that 90%, I would think, of the women in the book are corporate, of some, maybe not, that's the wrong word, but have their own businesses, they're business women. And that's been a great achievement in their lives, and finding the stories finding their way there. So I wonder if in the second book, it is going to be the same type of thing or something a little bit different.
Great question.
That is a great question. I think it's that a lot of it is that Kim and I are blessed to know a bunch of really amazing badass women who just happen to have businesses. I think that's a big part of it. We have an incredible circle of change makers that we're a part of, and we were, filling this project. We were issuing personal invitations to really bring in the storytellers that we knew would create this amazing book. It is not a requirement. And, however, we do know that a project like this can really serve women who are doing an impact mission in the world, who are working to get their voices out there, to really elevate their speaking, to elevate their platforms. That's a sort of benefit of a project like this as well, is that whatever our authors are doing, it's amplified by this work. And so, for some of us, that is amazing charitable work. For some of us, that is our entrepreneurial businesses. For others, it's really being leaders in our community. Inspiring. Nikki's work is amazing. She does incredible work right here in Providence, really supporting kids who need it desperately. But it's like putting a microphone up to whatever it is that we're already doing. And it's something that we do love, that happens as a natural effect of the work. But certainly, no, there's no barrier to entry. You don't have to have a certain kind of job or have a certain kind of work that you're doing in order to take part in something like this.
Thank you for asking that question. What else? I'm coming for you, Pam.
Thank you, Kelly. So my question is, for those who read your book, what is your hope for those who read your story?
Not to reiterate, but I just hope that people can realize that you can move forward from things and you can keep going. And that, sure, it's painful in a lot of ways, but it's there. I went to a retreat at Omega once, and I was learning about past lives. And this one man, he's a psychiatrist, he said that he believes the soul chooses the body that it's going to enter. And so sometimes I think to myself, when things are rough, that I knew what I was getting into, sort of, and that it kind of helps me on my journey. But I just hope that other people can see that too, and that they'll just keep moving forward.
I love it when we like want to pass the mic back and forth. No, you don't do it. Yeah, I'll do it. You do it. When I think about what I hope people can take away from my chapter is a few things. First, as I said earlier, live your life authentically. That's really my tagline for all of you. I think we all need to hold space for ourselves and for each other so that we can walk this life together and not separately. And that's really important. My chapter is called The World Was Never Deaf. And that's a reason for that, because I lived my whole life thinking that I didn't have a voice. And for those that know me will probably laugh at that because they think I'm probably a long talker, right? I have a voice. Sure, I get it, right? Of course. But the parts of me that I felt like I couldn't have a voice for, the ending of my story is really about, it wasn't that the world was deaf. It was waiting for me to ask for help. And so that's the other part that I would share with all of you. It's okay to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of anything other than surround yourself with a great community like we have through this process, with great people, and everything else will follow.
Oh yeah, I have a job. This side of the room.
Yes, we got to get this side of the room going. I'm Kim's sister, by the way. Right, exactly. Despite the fact that Kim is an amazing person, I do have a question for all of you, because when you tell your stories, did you feel different about who you were and what you could do with your life in a way that you didn't expect?
I'm happy to go first. I can say this journey, and I will call it a journey because it's not over, is nothing short of, one, it's very therapeutic, by the way. Go back into the parts of your life that you sort of closed up for a while and then reopen them. Wow, like it's a floodgate of emotions and thoughts and feelings. But what did I not expect? I didn't expect to get the closure that I thought I had already had in my life going through this. In addition to that, it did transform me. And I feel like it's given me the catalyst to take on a whole new chapter and be that person that I want to be moving forward.
Who wants to go next? We're all answering this one.
Okay, so, and I'm going to weave in an answer to the last question, because I love that too, about, what I desire for readers to take away from my writing. Yes, absolutely. I do feel transformed. I feel changed. I feel more at home in myself. I feel as though there was a permissionary part of this process that delivered even more than I could have imagined. As I said earlier, there was an aspect of going into the story of my own being, and coming back into communion with lost aspects of myself. It was just it's a process that I will forever cherish and be grateful for, that I got to be a part of. And I feel more confident. I feel more whole. I feel as though, the part of me that I had stuffed aside or just, thought, she was great. I mean, she's a badass. And yet I feel her even more elevated. And I see, for those of you that have read or are to read my story, it's a chapter called Initiation. And it was a time in my life where I took charge, I took responsibility. I decided that my life, my reality would be in keeping with what I chose it to be. And it took a crisis, it took an illness for me to heed that call. And so what I desire for those of you who read it is to access that power within yourself, to discontinue from giving, relinquishing, abdicating your power, your authority to others. Because that was the beginning of a time where people were starting to direct me. They were telling me, this is the kind of life that's ahead of you, right? This is the formula, this is the label, this is the prescription. And so I want everyone to feel that part inside of you that knows who you know. Like you know that part of you, your intuition, your gut feeling, that certainty inside of you that's like, what is really aligned and right for me? And to allow that voice to be your guide in any and all of your affairs. And finally, I'll just say too that I also would love for you to access your inner wild woman a bit. That part that knows how to be fully self-expressed and free. Yeah. Get her in there. Okay.
What would you say to someone who was afraid to tell their story? How would you invite them to explore and not be afraid?
Well, the first thing I'd say is to be okay with being afraid. You know, I mean, my story in part is a story of repression and what happens when I didn't allow myself to acknowledge and let free aspects of myself that I wanted. So I think there's great potency in releasing the quest to not be uncomfortable, the quest to not be afraid. I shouldn't be feeling this. So I think the first thing is I've just normalized. It's okay to be afraid. Of course you're afraid, honey. You know, it's understandable that you're afraid. And then link arms with people like Bryna and Kim, who will support you through the process, usher you through, and to meet those fears. Because, you know, when it comes down to it, your ability and capacity to meet your fears is your ability and your capacity to experience great heights of joy. And wonderment and beauty, because they're really all part of, you know, the same spectrum. So
absolutely,
I know that other people can speak, and once I get this going, I'm like, okay. I love you.
I love it.
So much.
I love it so much, Kendra.
She speaks, and I'm like, just keep talking, Kendra. I know you're just melodious. I love you. And thank you for that, because that is incredibly potent. And I just want to speak very briefly, because I know we're running out of time, to the technical aspects of this, because most of the time when people are afraid to tell their story, it's because they're afraid that their story will hurt someone that they love. Or their story will change the way that important people in their lives see them. You know, I never knew that you were going through that, or why didn't you tell me that happened? You know, there's a lot of complicated relationship dynamics involved in us telling our stories. And we actually have very clear techniques around helping people navigate those parts of their stories when it is delicate, when things maybe haven't come to light, especially, you know, things that are buried within families or relationships. And there are ways to do that without blaming, shaming, accusing, or, you know, throwing grandma under the bus. So, yeah.
Right. Bryna, thank you for bringing that part of the afraidness to light. So I just want to wrap up this part of our storytelling in our panel. And I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you beautiful ladies up here for coming up, for participating as part of the panel, and for sharing your stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
you guys. I just also want to reiterate that not every story means that you have experienced trauma in a profound, extreme way. I want you to understand that your stories are also reflections on your entire experience of anything. And that's important to know. It's enough to be a joyous person. How are you a joyous person? Maybe you've had a relationship or a conversation that moved or changed you in a special way. Sometimes our stories are just very tiny moments. It's not a whole life story or a whole big event or a particular experience that happened. But it's those daily, big and small things that really can move and change someone else who maybe is going through a similar thing, or help them navigate the thoughts that they're having about something, right? So I just wanted to bring that home too, because not everything is about, obviously, some grand thing that happened in our lives, even though we've all probably had very big things happen in our lives. So this next part of the story, let me just get my notes because I want to make sure I introduce these ladies. So we have 3 more dynamic storytellers, and then we're going to do a little fun game with you guys. You get to be storytellers too. So my next section here starts with the beautiful Alexa Gorman, who is part of the World Changers media team, but also one of our authors. She has been reading, creating, organizing, and chasing dogs in Connecticut for most of her life. She's a graduate of Stony Brook University School of Journalism, has quickly learned the hard-hitting life of a reporter was not for her. She spent the last 9 years as a saleswoman, social media marketer, content creator, energy healer, virtual assistant, and somehow insurance broker before combining her skills to support world changers and our authors. When she's not hyping up authors, strategizing, or creating content, you can find her obsessing over her fur babies, Java, the snuggly pit bull, Merlin, the high-maintenance beagle, and Bucky, the adorable rabbit. She loves listening to her partner James theorize about all things Marvel Comics and loves the thrill of a midnight premiere. You can also find her dancing, 16 years and counting, running, blame quarantine, devouring either fantasy or personal development books, or binging bad TV. Please welcome Alexa Gorman.
I get into awkward me doing stuff. Everybody stretch, because we've been sitting for a second. Like, just ground with me for a sec. Thank you. I took that tip actually from Kim, who said the first time that she spoke, she was so nervous that she got up and said, "Hey, everybody, I'm nervous. Can you breathe with me for a minute?" So that did help. Thank you. All right. So my story in Born to Rise is about the solo trip that I took to Peru to heal from my divorce and everything related to that piece of my life. And I thought it would take like a week-ish. So it didn't. But that you get to read. What I do want to tell you about is what happened right after I got back from my trip. And I have to start by saying, yes, Mom. Hi, Mom. Hi. You were right. You were so right. I did not double check my directions. Oops. So I land at JFK. I am exhausted. I am a little bummed to be back after a week of crying on top of mountains and having just a beautiful experience. And I'm definitely only awake because of the adrenaline of traveling alone. So there I am. I've got this giant backpack that, not kidding, just came out. I was so wide. The most terrifying part of my entire trip was being afraid of like turning too fast and smacking somebody with this thing, because I had no idea what I was doing.
So I've got my giant backpack. I'm exhausted. My phone is dying. And I have like $30 in my bank account because, again, didn't plan. So I cross my fingers and hope it's a quick walk, like over to Grand Central Station. I know we're in Rhode Island, but JFK and Grand Central, not near each other. No. And the security guard who very politely laughed in my face when I said, "What's the quickest way to walk there?" He was like, "You don't." And I was like, "Great." So I turn around and I Google map it, and he was right. It would have taken like 3.5 hours. I was like, amazing, okay. So I turn around, I head back into the airport, and who do I call? I call Mom. Mom. Yeah. Can you come pick me up? Yeah, no, I'm at JFK. No, I know I was going to take the train. I know. Mm-hmm. No, I know you're in Connecticut. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, no, you take your time. Okay, love you. See you soon. Bye. And she did, because she's great. So I find an outlet and a seat at like a little counter thing at JFK while I'm waiting for her. And like hoist my journal out of my backpack. And so I'm like, I'm going to just sit here. I'm going to enjoy the peace and quiet. I'm going to transcribe my notes from my phone into my journal from the week. Any like journal people here, you need a rough draft. Am I right? Like you need a rough. You can't just write in your journal. You have to have the notes to write in the journal. So anyway, so I'm like, yes, amazing. I'm going to transcribe the most important week of my life. It was soul awakening. It was the experience. So I open my journal and I begin writing from like point 1 of the week before. And I get about 3 sentences in before just a whole human is right next to me. And she stumbles over, and it is 11 a.m. She stumbles over, and she's like, is there a phone? Can I charge my phone? And I'm like, And so there's, mind you, it's pretty empty. There's multiple outlets, multiple seats, but the universe, this woman, all of the moments that lead up to this are like, no. She's going to sit right here. She's going to sit right next to you. Amazing. So she sits down, she wobbles, she pulls out her phone charger, and she looks me dead in the eye and goes, do you ever feel like everything's kind of just falling apart? And it's gonna be fine, but right now it's just pretty fucking awful. Why, yes, I do. Yes, I do. So we spend the next 2 hours deep in conversation with my very, very inebriated friend, whose name I don't know. To this day, we were best friends. Do not know her name. We talk about our families. We talk about our past relationships. We talk about the dreams we have in the future that you can really only talk about in the way of that like foggy, dreamy, philosophical, but not philosophical way because you're either really drunk or really sleep deprived, but you think you're being really philosophical. It was that kind of vibe the whole time. We laughed. We cried. It was so cliche, but it happened. We talked about heartbreak and healing and found ways to understand that when it comes down to it, humans are so resilient. So, have you ever had a conversation with someone where you're talking to them and there's a little voice in the back of your head that goes, oh, this is really important. Like, this is a moment. This is the thing that's happening. And you're like, I know, shut up. I'm trying to listen and I'm trying to focus. I appreciate the people who are laughing. If not, like, I will just go talk to my therapist about it and it'll be fine. But it's this fight between you and your brain and the person who's actually trying to talk to you. So this is happening to me. And it is what it is. So this is what's happening. And I sat down at the airport thinking that I would relive the past week, highlight the big moments, and find some deeper meaning to the trip. And I end up chatting with a stranger for 2 hours about everything and nothing. And that, more than anything, was exactly what I needed in that moment. A huge part of my story in the book is about releasing the shame that I felt around what happened with my ex-husband. I felt so ashamed of everything, of who I became, of what happened, the why, the how, all of it. And it felt like all I did was carry the weight of that. So all of it had to mean something. All of this had to mean something. I was surrounding myself with personal development books, motivational speakers, examples of how people took the shittiest moments of their life and made it mean something. And what I learned from a conversation with a stranger is that, of course, my story means something, but it doesn't have to mean everything. Because when you can step outside of something that was all-consuming and laugh and say, well, fuck, that sucked. That's the point. That's the meaning. When you can connect with a stranger and just be fully human, even for a little while, that's the meaning. To be able to release the shame, release the idea that I had to go on a pilgrimage to repent for the mistakes I made, the horrible situation that I'd fallen into, to step back and realize this wasn't the whole book, but just a few chapters that would lead up to some really good plot points. It meant something, but not everything. And that was my missing piece from the trip. That thought, that knowing, ended up leading me to open up to a new level of healing, and it helped me relax like a little. Mom laughed harder on that one. Let's go. She knows. I kick the shit out of myself, and I hold myself to a very high, very unattainable standard. And sometimes I'm nicer to me. Sometimes. So anyway, it was a weird way to end the trip. How I end up putting so much weight and pressure on a 5-day trip. I don't know. I don't think I would do that. I did. I told the universe that I wanted to get over it, to grand gesture my way all the way through it, wipe my hands clean of it. And the universe said, no, you're not doing that. What actually happened was realizing that it's just a drop in the ocean. For me, it rippled into tidal waves of healing, of pain, of love, of joy, of opportunities, all of that. But it also helped me see how deep the ocean is, how you can't put an end date on grief or heartbreak or healing. It's not something that you throw on a checklist and cross off. You laugh, you cry, you heal, you hurt. You feel the full spectrum as often and for as long as you need to. And I don't have to be ashamed of that. So when I plopped down into my mom's Jeep, she asked me how the trip was. And I had very few words for her. And it took me a while to find them. And maybe still almost 5 years later, there are pieces of it that I can't articulate. Because it meant something, but not everything. Thank you.
Please forgive me on the program. It says Christine Ammerman, but it's actually Christine Gallo who's coming up next. Yes. And before she shares, I just want you all to recognize the fact that part of your ticket purchase went to helping children be better educated. So salute yourselves for buying that ticket and knowing that some of that is going to that. We also have 3 charities who we are donating 20% of our proceeds to, one being the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, one for the Gloria Gemma Breast Cancer Foundation, and the Women's Resource Center. Gloria Gemma could not be here today, but the other 2 are here, and they're willing to answer any questions, and please feel free to continue to donate to these charities. Some of our women stories are closely related to some of the things that these women's organizations support. So I just wanted to make sure to shout out to them. And thank you for all of you who brought feminine supplies for amenity aid. I saw that the bucket was full, so thank you so much for that. That goes to very good use. So Christine Gallo, she's just amazing. She is a joy-filled, mindful mom who lives in northern Rhode Island with her husband Dan and 2 wonderful sons, Ever and Jasper. She was a public school educator for 17 years and left the classroom to focus on her family and mental health. Christine is a trauma-sensitive yoga and mindfulness facilitator for children and adults and leads international yoga retreats with her sister Kathleen. You can find her on Instagram under Sunflower Souls Yoga and her soon-to-be published blog, A Sunflower and Synchronicity.wordpress.com. Please welcome Christine Gallo.
And my maiden name was Christine McAllister. So there was a good possibility that 2 Christine McAllisters were going to be in this book. But yeah. So I am Christine Gallo. I just want to, before I start talking, I just wanted to let you know that some of the things that I might talk about are a little bit sensitive. They might be a little upsetting. So if you find that anything's difficult for you and you came with someone, you can just give them a little nudge to you. Let them know that you might need a little support. And there are resources out in the lobby for you after. I wanted to start my story by telling you about what my sister and I did last September. We led a group of women on a yoga retreat to Iceland, which was a bucket list for me and many of the women that we went with. So we were in northern Iceland, and part of our retreat, we went on an excursion to an island called Risi Island, which is a very powerful energy center. Our guide, who is the cutest little man, I just completely fell in love with him. He had led us on a mindfulness walk. So he encouraged us for the first part of this walk to walk in silence, which I am a fan of silence. I enjoy silence. So we started this walk in silence, and as we walked, he really wanted us to focus on the energy and what we felt. So I very mindfully and purposefully put one foot in front of the other. I could feel the energy through the ground, through my body. My hands were open to the side. My chin was lifted. My heart was open wide. And I was just immersed in the sounds of nature around us, immersed in the beauty, looking at the Arctic Ocean, the mountains. It was just amazing. And I just felt this just energy, the tingliness rippling through my body. We got to a certain point in our walk, and he had us lie against the moss and close our eyes and just notice what we were feeling. And I just felt the energy. I can't even express, I haven't even fully told my family or I think spoke about it to anybody other than the women that were on the retreat with me, because what happened to me was just so powerful. What I didn't realize I was doing was I was actually crying. And I had a huge smile on my face. After the walk, when everybody just kind of resumed their normal conversation, I found that I just was not able to talk to anybody. I was fully present, fully in the moment, and I need to stay that way. So it's kind of funny that during the trip, there were so many pictures of me off in the distance, sitting, looking out quietly. I was crying. My friends made a little Where's Waldo game. Where's Christine meditating right now? You see all these pictures of me sitting off by myself. But I just needed to sit and ground myself and feel the energy. Because what I noticed is that I felt whole, I felt complete, and I felt alive. I was alive. I made the choice 6 years ago to live. 6 years ago, I had been in a career that I thought I would be in my entire life. It was a career I loved. It was a career I wanted to be in since I was a little girl, and it was something that I was really, really good at. I was a public school teacher. I loved the children. My career was killing me. There's some people that I worked with that are in this room right now that we could write a whole story about what was happening. And this was pre-COVID days. This was public education pre-COVID days, so I don't even want to go to what people are going through right now. But this was back in 2017. The last few years of my career were very, very difficult. I found that I fully immersed myself in my job. I loved my students. I loved teaching. I loved everything about teaching. I had a class full of children that really needed me, and I was really good for them. The conditions in my school were, we're not going to talk about that because I had just returned from a weekend away where I was surrounded with people that I loved, people that cared for me. I had spent a lot of time in self-reflection. I was in nature. I felt really strong. I had read a great book on my trip out there. I felt strong. I felt good. When I came back to school that day, I really felt like I was in a place that I was stronger than I had been in a very, very long time. I had parked in the spot that I normally park in when I got to school that day, sat in my car, I did my mindfulness meditation, I was prepared, I was ready to walk into the building. I started to walk into the building slowly, and by the time that I got to my building, all that strength, all that resiliency, all the powerfulness that I had felt, it was all gone. So whereas when I was walking in Risi Island in Iceland this past fall, I felt stronger and more capable with every step, that walk that I took 6 years ago, with every step that I took, I felt every bit of me slipping away. And by the time I got to my classroom, I was gone. I felt completely, utterly empty, depleted, emotionally, physically exhausted. And it was a feeling that I was very familiar with. And it was a feeling that I had had my entire life. It was a feeling that I thought that I was doing all the right things to build up the resiliency for. But it just was there. So by the time I got to my classroom that day, and there was a lot of divine intervention that happened that day from my angels and my spirit guides, all those hidden forces that are around that are always kind of guiding you in the right directions, the one that you don't see, but they're always there, they're always present, they're always by your side. I knew that that day was the time that I needed to leave. Side note, I gave my resignation from my teaching career on June 9th, 2017, and my son graduated from high school June 9th, 2023. So those little lovely synchronicities that happen. The reason that that is very important to me to share is because if I had not left my teaching career in 2017, chances are I would not have been at graduation Friday night. My entire life, I have struggled with feelings of suicidal ideation, self-harm, from a very, very young age. I can remember really vivid thoughts when I was in about second grade on the playground, things that would come from seemingly out of nowhere that were really scary to a little girl, but I didn't really know what they were. I just knew that they were kind of like, As I got older, thoughts were always there. They changed and they morphed as I was growing up, and different hormonal changes that happened, and they would change and they morph around, but they were always present. It was probably in college when I was actually able to identify that what I had was clinical depression. I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And my thoughts would take a much darker turn, and I didn't have much control over them. They would come, I would have a really good, exciting thing that I was doing, happy thing that I was doing, and then immediately I would be paired with a very dark thought that I didn't understand why it was there, but they were often there. These thoughts were always exasperated by the fact that I didn't think that I had any reason to feel the way that I did. I had a loving support system. I had a lot of friends. I have a supportive family. I had a job that I loved. I had things that I loved to do. I'm cute. So, um, so all of those reasons, I felt so incredibly guilty because I didn't think I had any reason to feel that way. I did all the right things that I was supposed to do. I exercised, I ate well, I slept. I did therapy, I did medication. Gonna pause for a little bit. If you have tried therapy before and you did not feel that you clicked with your therapist, please find another one. My first therapist that I worked with, I was telling her all of these thoughts and feelings that I had and how guilty I felt because I didn't think I had any reason to feel that way. I caught her napping, like snoozing. So that was not the right therapist for me because she kind of just validated everything that I had already felt about myself. So if you're looking for a therapist and you don't feel like you're clicking with the one that you're working with, please keep trying because there are good ones out there that you will find. So that particular Monday morning when I went into my classroom and that message was sent to me very strongly and loudly that I needed to go, I knew that if I had not made a change, something needed to change. If I had not made the change that I made, I don't know the trajectory that would have happened, but it wasn't looking good. I was looking for a way out. And at that point in my life, I was going to take any way out. The thought of suicide was never scary to me. It was actually very comforting. I knew that if I had had enough, I had plans, I knew what I would do, and I wasn't afraid. The only thing that I was afraid of is what would happen to the people that I left behind and how I was going to help the people that I left behind process losing me, which is kind of impossible. That wouldn't have been able to happen. There were definitely things that always stopped me were thoughts that someone would find me and what they would go through if they found me and how they would have to deal with that memory for the rest of their life. Knowing that first responders would do everything they could to save me when I didn't want them to. And that would, if I went somewhere, my family would come to find me and bring me home. And I wouldn't want to put that burden on them and have them make that trip. But ultimately, the fact that I have two beautiful, joyful, happy, well-adjusted children that I love more than anything else, and what that would do to them to have to grow up without a mom. So ultimately, that was the one thing that I knew I would never do anything. I will never do anything because I would not want to do that to other people. So, making the change to leave my classroom, although struggling with the things that I had struggled with my entire life, making the change to leave the classroom, having those feelings that I had had my entire life and continuously going into a place that was really, really, really bad for me, I didn't find any light, I didn't find any way out, and I knew I needed to make some sort of change. And I definitely needed to leave teaching for a whole ration of other things. But leaving my classroom allowed me to find myself again. I was able to leave the Mrs. Gallo mask behind, the Mrs. Gallo mask that I wore very, very well, and I was able to find myself again. And with the support of my friends and my family and the people that are around me, I was able to reconnect with who I was. Which brings me back to Iceland. When we were in Iceland and we were on that walk, and I sat down, I recognized that I felt fully whole, I felt fully complete, I felt completely alive, and I felt like me. I knew that I was Christine, Mrs. Gallo. She's in the past, and I'm Christine, and I'm here, and I'm alive, and I chose to be this way. My sister and I both have a tattoo on our foot that says, "You will never walk alone." I mean that literally and figuratively. You always have people around you. Some of them might not be physically right next to you, but you're never walking alone. And if sometimes you are feeling that you are alone, think about the people that are above you that you can't see, because you have all of your ancestors, all of your angels that are walking right beside you all the time. So you are never alone, and thank you.
Okay, we got one more beautiful storyteller, and her name is Portia Michelle, and I've had the pleasure of hosting her the last 2 nights. We've stayed up way too late chatting. We just have been having a lot of fun. Portia Michelle is a peak performance coach, podcast host, a speaker, and energetic practitioner who empowers impact-driven leaders to unlock their essence and find more joy in the way they approach how they run their businesses. She supports and helps CEOs, coaches, and healers to reach their full potential in their career and do business in a way they actually fuck with. It's often said that leadership style, career, I didn't write these bios. It's often said that leadership style, career path, and overall well-being can be amplified and success accelerated through constant constructive feedback. And that's where a good coach like Portia kicks in. With her vast experience, she provides these leaders with support in planning, self-discovery, executive function, and increased productivity tactics that enable them to overcome negative emotions, harness their gifts, and maximize their impact. Please bring up my rainbow-wearing girlfriend, Miss Portia Michelle.
Slide out of my shoes. I'm sweating my butt off. Take a moment and be with you all. First of all, thank you so much for being here and sticking it out to the end. I'm grateful to close the house down with you all. And, you know, I love what Kim mentioned in my bio around doing stuff you actually fuck with. You'll find out in my story why that's so important. But I definitely did not start in that space. So I figured, you know, as I'm up here thinking about what I'm going to speak about today, I'm presented with kind of what my story and writing my story and cultivating my story really opened up for me. And for those of you who will read it and choose to read it, you'll get to see, you know, the roller coaster that it was, up, down, and around. But in a nutshell, the thing that really was the catalyst that started things off was pretty much everything in my life that I had planned to a certain point had broken, had shifted, had not gone well. I know I'm sitting in a room full of people who went through a pandemic. Anybody else in here have a plan that didn't go the way they thought? You know what I mean? Just me. And I hit it hard. And I was fucking pissed. I was so pissed because I had done everything right. I had made the sacrifices. I had stayed up late. I had strived, very similar to what Christine said about for the perfect job, the job that I wanted, that I had done all the things for. And at this point in my life, it seemed like everything was coming to a crashing halt. And if that was going to be the case, well, then who the hell was I after that, you know? And I'm remiss to talk about kind of what I thought was punishment was really redirection. And, you know, the universe, God, the powers that be, whatever you want to call it, whatever the energy is that created you and created this rock that we're on, was really attempting to redirect me. And how often, you know, are we sitting here thinking through the things that don't go right in our lives, the failures, the things that we think through of like, well, why me? I was having the why me, Lord moment. And what I realized was, had I not had this why me moment, nothing in my life would have gone the way that I actually wanted. Because by this point, I really thought I knew what I wanted. I really had this idea that I had really strived for something. But what I've learned at this point in my life now is that you can't be what you can't see. And I thought, and that the person that I was creating myself to be, and that the life that I was creating myself to live was in the image that I really wanted, but it really was only in what I knew. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was trying to control every single piece of it so well. And the universe was going, be bigger, or not quite like this. You kind of like this, but I bet you if you take a chance and really see, you may really enjoy this better. And it took me really sitting with, and what I really want to share with you all today about this particular piece was how often and how important it is for us to embrace the redirections. Think about in your life right now, all of the things that maybe you would consider to be failures, or you would consider to be crashes and burns in your life. Did it or did it not really turn you in the right direction to be exactly where you are now, today? And one of the things that's been so powerful about reading this book is my story is not the only story of that. As you guys get to, move through this anthology and hear all of these women's powerful stories, you'll see that so many of them have the thing in their life that matters the most to them today because something crashed and fucking burned. And they were able to take the redirection. So I will offer you that. Take the redirection. Blessed in our life are the redirections. Another real big thing that came out of me understanding that when everything crashes down, who am I really, was I had no clue who I really was. And I just want to speak to the women and femmes in the room. We have become masters, and it's almost sometimes like a badge of honor for us to be in this world knowing everything about everybody else. We create a whole world for our kids, know how to make millions for our bosses, know how to be able to turk the emotional regulation of every family member and make sure mom doesn't talk to dad this way and make sure the sister doesn't sit next to the brother-in-law's wedding because they're actually, I know half of the moms in this room, if your kid, when your kid was a baby, farted across the room, you'd be able to go, was it wet, was it dry, and what am I doing about it? But when we sit down and think about what we really want, who we really are, I find so many of us women and femmes come up blank. And that's the thing that really this big kind of crashing down of my life taught me was, Portia, you've got no freaking clue. So maybe the work that there is to do, rather than striving, is to sit down and figure out how you actually tick. What do I like? What don't I like? What do I look like when I'm in peril? One of the things that you'll hear, in the very beginning of my story is I was in peril. In full burnout, had no idea. How many of us also in this room are running on fumes and don't even know what not running on fumes is like? One of the things I had to discover for myself was, Portia, what do you look like when you're rested? Have you ever been rested, right? What does it look like when you've got 8 hours of sleep? What does it look like when you're being fulfilled? What does it not look like when you're being fulfilled? What are the patterns that are in your life that are keeping you stuck? And why? And is there something that you can do about them? What are your triggers? Why are you triggered by them? And why do they keep coming up that way? What is it trying to tell you? It's like that thought process I really realize now is like the universe really only has like 3 answers to your questions. It's either yes, not right now, or babe, we've got something better. And if all of these things are happening in my life and I can look at them, what is that story trying to tell me? And based on that, let's make a decision from there. Not what I should do, not what I can do, because I'm great at a lot of things. I'm great at a lot of things, and I've been grateful to be great at a lot of things. A good life of trauma will keep you great at a lot of things. Yeah, I can solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. I've been doing it my whole life. However, what's my work to do and what the things that I really would light me up to be able to do, those questions really lied in me taking the time to discover myself. And I think so many of us just don't make the time. We'd rather discover everyone else and everything else than make the hour or the 2 hours or the 3 hours or the 20 hours, if that's what it takes, to sit down with ourselves and figure out our inner operating system. I could stand up about it and preach until, I'm blue in the face, because it really did save my life to stop relating to myself as inherently a problem and realize I just had the wrong instruction manual. And life is so much better when you've got instructions. I feel like so many of us are these like sacred vessels of love and light, like channeling the wisdom of the earth. And we're really like, IKEA desks. Do not try to put it together without the instructions. It is a harder process. You can try to fuck it out. I wouldn't. None of those things are going to be intuitive, and taking the time to understand the way that you work, the way that you think, the way that you thrive makes all the difference. And even in the conversation around taking care of oneself, I love being in a room full of women and femmes, and I'll say things like, guys, you got to think about our self-care. It's like audible eye roll. If I have one more massage. If I get one more pedicure. Well, honey, I'm going to let you know, if your self-care is pretty, but it's not scratching the itch, it may be because it's somebody else's self-care. You've got to know yourself to care for yourself. And if the bath times and the movie nights aren't hitting, it may be worth thinking through what actually will make you feel fulfilled and doing the work to fill your life with that. And that's what I would love, to leave you all with today. And as you think through, a conversation around what your story will be, as you think through, when you leave here and you're inspired by all of these authors, before you even get a chance to write your story, take the time to actually think through who you are and what you want to say. What's been, one of the beautiful things about this experience has been, Kim asked me, well, Portia, what was the story in your life that you think really made you who you are? And I said, damn, I'm so glad that I stopped to figure it out. I'm so glad that I stopped to figure it out. So thanks again for being with me today, y'all. Thanks for letting me be up here.
Amazing. So I had an envelope up here. I don't know, Katie, did it get moved when we did the dance? There was okay, thank you. So I would love a couple of volunteers who think they don't have a story, would love to tell a story, want to know what it feels like to have a microphone in your hand and be on the stage. So the first 3 people that raise their hand, go. So that means I got to call on people. Lisa, get up here. Anybody else? Ram, get up here. Yeah. We need a male voice too. Anyone else? One more person. Be brave. Be bold. Say yes to something. Yes. Ayla. Oh, my 2 Born to Rise t-shirt wearers too. So this is a game that we play at most of our monthly story nights. And I invite people up. And it's just a way to start to realize that we all have stories. And I just give a little simple prompt, and you get to do a 1-minute pop-up story. So it's just a fun game, so we'll do a round of it. So let's see here. Put your hand in there and pick out a card. Get ready. There might be a pen in there, but what does the card say? Medicine. So you each are going to tell a 1-minute story about medicine.
Hi, everybody. So I have to talk about my mother, because my mother is a force of nature, as I think all mothers are. And she was into holistic medicine for my whole life. And to this day, there are some things that it's not more of a story as much as an anecdote, but bear with me. There are some things that stick with me about all the things that she taught me regarding holistic medicine. I know when I have an upset stomach, it's Oregon grape root. And I also know that when you're in high school and middle school and you talk to your friends and you tell them to take Oregon grape root for an upset stomach, they look at you like you have 7 heads. And at the time you don't appreciate that, and you go back to your mother, to your parent figure, and you say, why are everyone's laughing at me? But the truth of the matter is, she always does know what was best and always had my best interest at heart. And that in itself is a form of medicine that I honor and respect and I take with me. And medicine.
You want us, all of us, to talk about medicine? Okay. Well, medicine to me is a number of things. For me to feel really awesome, I find medicine in my music and being on stage and singing. Unfortunately, a couple years ago, well, almost 2 years ago, I have to take different kinds of medicine to make myself feel good. And it was a life-changing event, but you know what? My music is still here, and that's where I decided to go, even though I have to take medicine that keeps me alive. So even if you have an illness, but you also have something that makes you feel good, that's where I want to focus. Not on my illness, not on the fact that I have to take medicine, not that I have to, have that define me, because it doesn't. What defines me is what makes me happy. And that's the way I want to live.
All right. I think my goal is just going to be to, if you don't know, my name is Ayla. This is my stepmom, Lisa. Kim is my adoptive family, pretty much. Everybody is just kind of taking me in, and I'm just going to try to make her cry today. So, when I was about 13 or 14, I think, that I came into their lives. My dad met Lisa and this whole wonderful family, and as I watch everyone here today and everything that they've done, I'm just really grateful to be a part of it, even if I feel like I kind of lurk in the shadows sometimes. But this all ties back to medicine, is because I was really sure that I knew exactly what life was supposed to be at 13 years old. I knew how to I knew how to take care of myself. I knew what I was doing. I knew everything. And then I moved into Lisa's house, and she said, "No, you don't." And I didn't realize how much that I needed to be healed, and I didn't realize the moment that maybe my medicine was this one note in a paper bag at lunch. She made me my first paper lunch ever, and it was just a moment that I think about way more often than I think I ever expected to. It was my first day of school, and she said, "Here's your lunch." And I said, "I normally get free lunch." She said, "No, I made this one special for you." And I just went to lunchroom, and at school just expected it to be a sandwich, and she just had a really beautiful note just wishing that I had the best first day. And I didn't think that I needed that, and I didn't think that I needed that healing until I read that note. So thank you for being part of that medicine for me.
Thank you. You guys were so courageous. And you can see how just one word will mean something different to everyone. Just like every experience could be the same experience, because basically life is happening. It's just happening. I'm putting a piece of paper down on a stool. What are you going to make it mean? But that's what we do. We're meaning-making machines, right? So just notice that stories can come in the forms of fables, stuff we make up about what's happening. We can stay present and wait for the story to emerge in the awareness that comes. And then there's stories that are horror stories. Stuff is actually happening that's kind of bad in your life. But as you can see from all the stories that have just been told, we are also extremely resilient as human beings, and we're even better when we're in community. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I'd love to bring all of my authors who are here up on the stage for one more round of applause. And please give yourselves a round of applause, because you probably had something to do with their lives. A lot of you are connected to these authors. You've raised these authors. You've loved them. So thank you guys. And they will stay. But authors, can you just come up and just one more round of applause for them?
Thank you. If you have a book, hang out, they'll sign your book.